Good news, Shane Smith has a chance to be a stud. The bad news, Mike Clevinger ruined Smith's great start, and let's discuss on today's episode of Locked On White Sox.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm your host, Todd Welter, a lifelong Sox fan and the site expert of SouthsideShowdown.com, part of the Fansided Network. And also, I've covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. And thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure to hit the like button on today's episode. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. And also follow or subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcast. Shane Smith was amazing in his second MLB start, only for Mike Clevinger to ruin everything by not being able to throw strikes. So let's discuss Smith potentially being a stud, and then this team wasting its time with Clevinger. Then the White Sox have brought back Brandon Drury, but it might not be the ideal time to have him in the organization. And finally, let's do a Wayback Wednesday, as I want to go over Octavio Dotel's time on the South Side as the well-traveled reliever tragically passed away. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. All right, so it may be two starts, but Shane Smith is trending towards stud status. I mean, he is looking like a dude out on the mound there. And he cleared his first hurdle in his career, so you also got some data that he might be able to be an outstanding big league starter. You know, his development this year is more important, obviously, too, in the long run than losing to the Guardians 1-0. I mean, that's the biggest takeaway here. Yes, it stinks that the White Sox lost 1-0 to the Guardians. Yes, it sucks that the White Sox have lost 6 straight. It's even worse that the White Sox are 2-8, and who knows when they're going to get their next win with how this bullpen has been constructed. But him developing into a very good starting pitcher, that matters more in the long run. So that's why I'm not totally upset with this defeat. I mean, I'm upset because of how the Sox lost. Mike Clevinger, that's basically how they lost. That's what I would put on the epitaph of this defeat. Yes, you can argue back. The offense did not score runs as a reason that they lost. The bats were 1 for 8 with runners in scoring position. Also, just 2 total hits. That's right, 2 darn hits. But they also drew 5 walks, and Luis Robert Jr. also reached base on a throwing error in the 9th. They did miss chances to score in the 4th, 6th, and 9th too. So, you know, I'm not excusing the bats. But they were also facing Cleveland, known for their pitching. And they actually did have a moral victory in that they had good at-bats against Guardian starter Blake Lively, who, you know, he had a very good season last year. And they had some very, very good at-bats against him. Drove his pitch count up. Luis Robert Jr. even, I think, had 2 walks. So, you know, they got him out by the 5th. So at least it's the moral victory there. Yes, you want them to score runs. But them scoring runs was going to be an issue well known. But when it comes to Clevinger, if the Sox hold him in such high esteem and trust him when 29 other teams don't, then he can't have games like yesterday, where he loads up the bases on an infield single where he couldn't feel the ball correctly. I mean, yes, it was a tough situation to start the inning. Ball lines off of Vaughn, but Lenyn Sosa positions himself great defensively. Yes, Lenyn Sosa positioned himself well, and that's the other thing. You're actually starting to see these guys get positioned better. He's able to field the ball, throws it to Clevinger. Clevinger can't field, he can't make the catch. There's your base runner. And then he issues 2 more walks, and then he walks in the winning run. The Guardians won the game without having to swing a bat, basically. And I think former host of the show, Herb Lawrence, at Ecknerwall23, I think he had the averages of the 3 guys he walked. And none of them are these guys that are like feared hitters either. But if you're the only team that sees any value in this dude, and he can't keep the game at 0 for the second time this early in the season, then yeah, I'm putting his feet to the fire first before I put it on the offense. But man, Smith was so good. I mean, that was actually enjoyable to watch. I loved watching Shane Smith. He took a no-hit bid into the 6th. And the no-hitter gets ruined, basically, gets ruined by Jose Ramirez, but it's not ruined in the fashion you'd think where it's like, there's Jose Ramirez being this ghost that always hunts the White Sox. Nope. It was a weak infield single that rolled just enough to an open spot because, you have Miguel Vargas not playing the line because you're not going to play the line against Jose Ramirez. You're playing Jose Ramirez to probably scold the ball, more towards the middle of the infield. So I have no problem with the defensive positioning there. Just rolls enough to stay fair for the infield hit. So think about that. Weak contact is how his no-no got broken up because that's how dominant he was. Absolutely masterful out there. 6 innings of no runs, 2 hits, 1 walk, and 6 strikeouts. His changeup was amazing. And as friend of the show, Elijah Evans, he tweeted out on Elijah EV8 from Just Baseball. He's still developing that changeup. I mean, that's still a work in progress, and it looked. Go check out Pitching Ninja at Pitching Ninja. I know the team's broadcaster would look at it, but I mean, he was throwing up some swords, and he cleared a bar. He actually cleared a development bar. Big league debut, cruised through 5 innings, then just abruptly ran out of gas in the 6th inning. And then the wheels fell off for the entire Sox team and possibly the season. I mean, you might be able to point to that game, that 6th inning, being where the season just completely had no hope whatsoever. Because remember, we had some false hope. And I'm not putting it on Smith. I mean, Smith gets the first 2 outs in the 6th inning, threw 63 pitches, and then those final 9 pitches, only one of them were strikes, and even admitted, kind of just ran out of gas. It was very quick. It was very abrupt. Where, yeah, I mean, Will Venable tries to get Penn Murphy up as quickly as he can, and then it's on Penn Murphy to execute, and he doesn't. So, but the thing is, he runs into the same situation in the 6th inning against the Guardians when he allowed 2 on, and there's 2 outs, and Ramirez is on third. But this time, manager Will Venable leaves him out there to see, can he get the out? And this time, whereas because in the first start, he, pulls him because they're seeing the velocity dip. The velocity wasn't dipping, but the command was starting to get out of whack. It was starting to get out of whack in the fifth inning, where even I was starting to watch, where I was watching, I'm like, after seeing him, that last start, maybe let's just call it a day. But I'm glad they let him out there for the 6th. Let him clear the bar. Let's see if he can clear this hurdle. And he gets Manzano to strike out to end the inning, and he gets him on 3 pitches. 2 foul balls, and boom, swing and strike. I mean, that was clearing a hurdle too. That's a data point right there. I mean, he was so good out there, he got a sword on Stephen Kwan. Absolute sword. Where the guy just weakly swings at a bat. They call that a sword now. I mean, not many guys get a sword on Stephen Kwan. And Shane Smith made one of the best leadoff hitters and a guy who torments the White Sox look weak. That's how good he was. Now, obviously, still has ways to go toward officially achieving stud status. But man, when I watch him, I'm getting that, like those same vibes I got watching Garrett Crochet last year, where, for the first couple of starts, you're like, oh, there might be something here. So yes, he still has ways to go, but you at least have some evidence he can meet a developmental moment. And his stuff is really, really good. So very, very happy to see that. On the flip side, the Sox are just wasting their time with Mike Clevinger. He just can't throw strikes. He just can't. He followed up that Saturday outing where he threw 15 pitches, only 4 for strikes, with 31 pitches thrown, 16 go for strikes. His velocity, at least according to Fangraphs, is at 93.2. I think Baseball Savant is measuring it at 94.1. Either way, you're just seeing a guy who is basically getting in the way. You're seeing his velocity continue to decline over his career, and he's just getting in the way, much like he did last season. I mean, I get the team wants to develop prospects like Jairo Iriarte and Grant Taylor to their ceilings as potential good starting pitchers rather than their floors of dominant bullpen arms. So I get why those guys aren't there. And I mean, even though, again, I've made it clear my stance on Mike Clevinger, the human being, and even Mike Clevinger, the pitcher. I get if you want to try to have a bridge guy, but you know what? Through 5 games now, he's not a bridge. He's not a guy covering time, especially when you got Addison Coffey, who's 26, Gus Varland still in his 20s at AAA Charlotte that are actually producing. And Gus Varland gave you a good cameo last year. Heck, if you're looking for a bounce back reliever, you got Steven Wilson still in the Charlotte still at Charlotte. So you have younger options in your organization that likely could do better, and yet we're wasting time on Mike Clevinger. When the rest of the league has made it clear 3 times, you don't need to waste your time. You don't need to waste your time. And Clevinger, bros, this goes beyond the character issues. And this goes beyond his 2023 season. This is the eye test. This is the here and now. And it's saying he ain't good anymore. He's not good. And he has no trade value. So this is not a guy that you could think, well, he's going to have a bounce back season. We'll just flip him at the trade deadline. Because 3 times, remember, 3 is the magic number, where all it would cost is just money. 29 other teams said, nope, we ain't paying him. So you think the rest of the league would suddenly just give up a young player if he's productive? I doubt it. Because of the character issues. That goes back to the character issues. And that's, you can take that up with the 29 other teams. Not with me. Okay, I don't want to see any comments about that. But I just don't get this belief is, well, he threw at 95 at one point and was able to top out at 97. So, yeah, he could be our righty, pitcher who misses bat with missed bat stuff. That could be that. That could be our guy. Because right now he's struggling just to throw strikes, period. Guys are just sitting on him. He struggled to throw strikes last season in his brief outings, and it's gotten worse. 42 balls to 41 strikes. That's the eye test, folks. That's why he's wasting our time. And my standard for the bullpen is everyone should be on a short leash. You should also be moving heaven and earth to find just some guys who can get some outs. They should be churning over the bullpen if guys are not performing well for like a week and a half. I would have that short of a leash. Part of it is we saw last year when they gave all these guys these long leash, they kept being terrible. We wasted our time on Dominic Leone and John Brebbia. Okay, I don't want to see that again. And plus, if the team decided, you know what, we're not going to spend just that little extra cash to get some flippable veterans who can produce and then get you a William Bergolla at the trade deadline, we're not going to spend that money. Basically, you are saying we're going to look at the scrap heap. We're going to look at the minor leagues. We're trying to find guys that can be part of our future bullpen going forward. And we're going to see, yes, if Penn Murphy can be flipped or Tyler Gilbert or Cam Boozer, but we're not really interested in a bunch of flippable guys. Okay? So I don't care if it's 5 games, short leash. I don't care if Mike Clevinger has thrown only 3 innings, short leash. And there is the standard, folks. There's the standard, Clevinger bros. Brian Shaw last year, he got 5 games and 4 innings before he was DFA'd. Well, Brandon Drury is officially back with the organization after being signed to another minor league deal. However, let's go if the Sox will need him anymore. Next on Locked On White Sox. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1-ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and the better-for-you unsaturated fats to help you keep feeling fuller longer. And I'm a huge fan of the no-shells variety. Perfect grab-and-go snack for busy days. I'm a huge fan of roasted and salted no-shells, Wonderful Pistachios. It's just the perfect blend of roasted and salted that you get plenty of flavor without getting thirsty that you need to down a gallon of water after eating some. Also, I love the honey roasted flavor too. Just tastes so good. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, well, the in-shell options are a classic favorite. Get snacking, get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, make sure to hit the like button on today's episode and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. And if you can't catch the show on YouTube, Locked On White Sox is available on all major podcast platforms, so make sure to follow or subscribe on places such as Apple or Spotify. Either way, get your 30-minute fix of Chicago White Sox baseball venting with me. So, if not for a fractured thumb, Brandon Drury likely would be in the White Sox lineup right now. The Sox tried to see if Drury could have a bounce-back season after a miserable 2024 season, and he was showing, in fact, that he was capable. Had a spring training slash line of 410, 439, 821, and that should have gotten him a job rotating at second base with Lenny and Sosa. But, and I remember James Fegan of SoxMachine.com pointed this out. The type of minor league deal Drury signed allowed him to request for a status. Basically request, what is the status on the team? Is he going to make the roster or not? And if it was no, he had to be released. Basically, it was either, yeah, we're going to get you on, you're going to be on the opening day roster, pack your bags for Chicago, or it's no. And in that case, then he would then have to be released. So his camp invokes that process. And then he's apparently taking, he's basically taking ground balls while his camp, his agent is invoking that process, and he fractures his thumb. So it's just terrible timing. But it would also mean then he would have to stop baseball activities for a couple of weeks. And basically then you can't undo that process. Once, the ball is starting to roll down the bowling alley, you can't just run back and stop and say, no, we didn't mean to ask for a status, that type of stuff. Nope. So the Sox then, are going to change their thinking. They're like, well, we're not going to DFA somebody, clear a roster spot just to put this guy on the IL, knowing that he's probably going to have to be shut down for a couple of weeks because, again, it's his thumb, so gripping the bat, he can't really do any baseball activities. So we're just not going to, get rid of somebody that can maybe be productive even for us on AAA. And if there's an injury, we have to call him up right away, that type of stuff. So the Sox release him. Since, again, he wasn't going to accept a minor league placement in the first place, so that was another thing. They could have just said, well, we'll send you down to Charlotte. Say he didn't request that. They probably just could have done is, hey, we'll send you down to Charlotte, technically, wink, wink, nod, nod, or extended spring training. You'll just be on the injured list there. Then you'll ramp back up and extended spring training or Charlotte. But in this case, this type of specific thing that they had to do, they basically had to release him. Now, when they did release him, the hope was after he heals up, he would resign. But there was the risk of cutting him, making him a free agent and available to anybody. So a contender could have looked at his spring training and been like, we could use his power off the bench. We'll give him a big league deal, let him heal up, and then he'll come with us, or then he'll help us. But that risk was averted as he was, he signed another minor league deal with the team that, the team announced yesterday. He's headed back to extended spring training to ramp up. However, I wrote about this on SouthsideShowdown.com. Sox might not need him anymore. At least, at least in the infield. They definitely don't need him in the infield. They obviously need his potential to hit home runs, as the Sox haven't hit a dinger in days. I mean, I think it's been 4 or 5 games, since they've hit a home run. They got off to that 9 home run start. They're technically in the middle of the pack, whereas last year, remember, they were dead last. And I even said in spring training, where's this power going to come from? They showed a little bit of potential in the cold Chicago air that they could hit some home runs. Obviously, there's been a complete power outage now. So you could use Drury at DH to get his power bat in there. However, this is where I concoct these hypotheticals in my head. I'm sorry about this. There could be a problem if by, say, May, catching prospects Kyle Teel and Edgar Carroll keep making it nearly impossible to keep them off the big league roster. Then you want both their bats in the lineup, or even if it's one or the other in there, you want their lineup in there, their bats in the lineup every day when they're not catching. Plus, Luis Robert Jr. needs days at DH because they want to save his legs. And Andrew Benintendi may need to DH depending on what this hip problem turns out to be. And the official update on the TV on the TV broadcast from John Triffin was they were going to reevaluate him after yesterday's game. So he was not available. And I'm almost at the point where, again, if there's any issue, just put him on the IL. You cannot be playing a man down with how offensively deficient you are. You've got to at least have some help. So if he can't swing a bat and run the bases for a couple of days, put him on the 10-day IL. Okay? It's 10 games. You'll be fine. I would rather have his overall impact for the season rather than play with one arm tied behind your back, because he needs 6 or 7 more days to maybe feel a little bit better. Now, Teel and Carroll problem could just be kicked down the road, as the Sox could wait until the trade deadline to at least get Matt Thaiss off their roster. And remember, contenders always need catching help. Not saying he's going to get a ton, but you're seeing very good at bats. You're seeing a professional catcher. And he is, for those that are complaining that Corey Lee isn't playing, I mean, the Triffin and Steve Stone have made it clear, Thaiss is actually the starting catcher. He is the starter. So, and he's giving you professional at bats, taking lots of pitches, getting walks, so contenders always want catching help. So you could probably trade him. You could probably, but you might only get a player to be named later. So you could avoid maybe having the Teal Carroll problem there. But right now, Nick Maton has been your primary DH. So that's why it's like, okay, I can see why they want Drury in the organization, except you better be willing to DH, because that's the only spot where it kind of makes sense now to have him in the organization, because infield-wise, Brooks Baldwin has proven enough during the first 10 games that he needs an extended look. He needs a runway. He's earned it. I actually agree. I'm with the guys that it's like, I have no problem giving him the first half of the season, especially with how Colson Montgomery is just not producing at AAA. So I have no problem now with Brooks Baldwin getting a runway. And Chase Meidroth is making it hard to keep him at AAA. So ideally, you want Baldwin at short, Meidroth at second, give them the runway. But then there's Josh Rojas lurking in the shadows as he's on the IL with that fracture in his big toe. But if he recovers before Drury, you got to think he's going to rotate in at second, because that, again, and even third, because those are his better defensive positions. So you don't really have a lot of spots for Drury. I mean, if Benintendi needs to DH more, you could maybe put him in left. He's obviously a better hitter than Michael A. Taylor and Austin Slater. So that, but again, ideally, you just making the roster out of spring training was fine, because at the time, Baldwin was still just a guy who didn't do much in a brief cameo last season and had minor league options. And again, I would have been fine if you had Drury over Baldwin based on the context. Baldwin was still this unknown, didn't really impress, didn't really be like, oh man, this guy's going to be something. Obviously, through 10 games, you're seeing that, hey, this guy deserves a runway. He's, he had a great offseason, worked out, made sure to bulk up. He studies all the things that you want to be like, hey, this is a guy that maybe we should take a look at. And obviously they need his power, they need Drury's power. Can you use him at DH? But again, it's just, it just keeps being not the ideal time and context, because now he might be blocking somebody if you wanted to play him more at second base, because again, Meidroth didn't earn a big league job in camp. So the context was there to add Drury. You had a justifiable spot because he wasn't going to get in the way of anybody. Plug him at second, showcase him to the league. If he carries that strong spring over to the regular season, you could easily flip him by, say, June. And that way he's just not getting in the way of anybody. But now, and this is my standard, and might be high when it shouldn't, I would just prefer if the Sox have a young option to go with that option. And you have that in Baldwin and Meidroth. And I think I made that standard pretty clear throughout spring training. And I said it all spring. If you had a young option that didn't emerge, which technically, Baldwin had a decent spring, but it wasn't like, oh man, we got to have this guy over Brandon Drury. I was fine with going with the veteran or the relatively youngish failed prospect first, like Nick Maton. I was fine with that. But now you have two young players emerging as being worthy of, let's see what is there. So that's why I just bring up the timing of Drury coming back to the organization. Former White Sox reliever Octavio Dotel was among 110 people who died in the Dominican Republic after a roof collapsed in a nightclub. And I want to remember his time with the White Sox on today's Wayback Wednesday, as it's fitting to honor a player every team wanted. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your wealth, and you just stop managing your money, and you start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing your money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, shout out to all the everydayers. I appreciate your loyalty. Please hit the like button on today's episode. I recommend to your fellow Sox fans or baseball fans, friends, to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox, wherever they get their podcasts, as this show is available on all major podcast platforms. Well, I thought The Athletic did a great job honoring Octavio Dotel, who passed away tragically after he was at a nightclub in Santo Domingo and the roof collapsed. I believe, like I said, it was 110 people passed away. More than 200 were injured. He was there attending a concert when the roof caved in. Dotel pitched for 13 teams, one of them being the White Sox. And I love what Tyler Kepner wrote in The Athletic. The first general manager to trade right-handed pitcher Octavio Dotel didn't want to do it. Nobody who knew Dotel really wanted to get rid of him. Quote, "There are guys who get traded a lot because they're not good guys," Steve Phillips, the general manager of the 1999 New York Mets, said by phone on Tuesday. "He got traded a lot because everybody always vouched for him," end quote. I like that opening paragraph and that quote. And Phillips was the guy who ended up trading Dotel and didn't want to trade him because Dotel was the player that every team wanted. Dotel had 2 seasons with the White Sox, and that came in 2008 and 2009. He had a 3.55 ERA and 129 and 1/3 innings and 167 strikeouts for the White Sox. He pitched in all 4 of the Sox 2008 playoff games against the Rays. He had a career 3.78 ERA in his 15-year career that was capped off by winning the 2011 World Series when he was with the Cardinals. But the key was he was consistently good enough that every team valued him. And the Sox got him when he was 34, and he was still good enough to help him win a division title. So it's just sad the world no longer has a man that everyone wanted in it. Well, that wraps up this edition of Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the all-new Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night, all season long. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And I'll be back tomorrow to discuss what I wanted to do today, and that is my thoughts on Will Venable in the very early goings of his managerial tenure. Feel free to leave comments about today's discussion on Shane Smith pitching great yesterday, only for Mike Clevinger to ruin it, Brandon Drury coming back to the organization, and the tragic passing of former Sox reliever Octavio Dotel. You can leave them at the episode page on YouTube, X, formerly Twitter, at ToddJW or at Locked On Sox, or you can email me at lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com. Have a great day, and I will see you tomorrow.